Cool.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Avaya's Healthy Aging Curriculum. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner, Ike Allen, and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of Avaya University. Avaya is a creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thanks so much for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Dr. Nima, Rahmany, and I almost did it again, we have done that a couple of times, is here with us today to talk about, are your relationships aging you? How to take advantage of creating secure attachments for health and longevity. Dr. Nima is both a chiropractor and an educator, specializing in helping individuals and professionals get to the root cause of their physical and emotional challenges, from stressed, depressed, and anxious to living powerfully aligned and on purpose. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Nima, and bearing with me in my mispronunciation of your name.
I was truly offended, and I'm going to try to put it aside and continue with the conversation as best I can. So
excellent.
Excellent. Thanks for having me, Andy.
Yeah. I'm super excited to dive into this topic. I love talking about, psychology as it relates to our physical health and just, overall happiness. So I think this will be great. So let's just give why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do first?
Well, I'm a trained chiropractor. This is my first love. I had my first chiropractic adjustment at the age of 13, and I was like, whoa, I want to do this. The way that I would feel when I got up from my adjustments, it was like, I couldn't explain it. It was so amazing. And so that from the age of 13, I kept going and finally graduated at the age of 25, that process. And I was like, all ready to go. And I'm out in practice and dealing with this incredible amount of anxiety. Like, holy crap, I am now a doctor. I am paralyzed with debt, insecurity, low self-esteem. I have no idea, I don't have the confidence to run a business. And so I started realizing that I wasn't feeling that great, and I was being very inauthentic, trying to put on a face and help my clients when I myself wasn't really in the best of emotional places. So I just took it upon myself to start developing myself personally. I thought this would be a good opportunity as I'm building my business to start, understanding self-development, self-healing for whatever stories of imposter syndrome were going on in my mind. And as I did that, I would notice slowly over time, my patients, helping them, my practice started to grow, started to flourish. And I would start noticing patients coming in and getting to know them. And they were all dealing with these same stress-related disorders. In other words, the root cause of why they came in, if it wasn't an injury or an accident that I had to deal with, was stress and emotional in origin. And after continuing this for 15 years and having a patient named Gwen who came in with all sorts of back pains and a long list of medications like this, everything that I had learned in personal development that I wanted to teach my patients, but couldn't because of the confines of the office, she ended up doing very well with her back, but 3 months into her care, she died of a heart attack. And she had one of those old stories of suffering, old traumas that we didn't really address, but I knew was there. You could see it in her physiology. And in that moment, I decided I'm going to expand from just being in my office and offering that to my patients. So I started creating these little workshops in my office called Life Skills for a Stressful World. Saturday morning, 3 hours. That was 10 years ago. Today, there are 3-day workshops called the Overview Experience. And what I discovered was that if we don't address the emotional root causes of what causes people to become stressed, depressed, and anxious, no amount of end stage care from primary caregivers, doctors, chiropractors, naturopaths is ever really going to address the root cause. So slowly, as I gave myself more permission, I left my chiropractic practice, sold it full, and went into full-time teaching, coaching. And I'm a global lecturer. I travel the world and I set up these live trainings to help heal emotional wounds that are associated with our health issues. And what I discovered was if you just keep going upstream for the stress-related issues that are causing aging, illness, disease, what do you think those stresses are about, Andy?
Something from our past, trauma, all that stuff.
As it pertains to what?
Relationships, connections to people.
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, all right, if I really want to help healing, which healing is really about integrating and embodying this feeling of healing, not just cognitive healing. It's really about helping people learn how to navigate through relationship trauma, fractures in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And when we take care of that, it's like a domino effect. The body starts to heal and people start to feel more alive and vibrant. So essentially it's, how you relate to others, how you relate to yourself in the context of the universe will make or break your trajectory with your health, your business, finances, relationships, everything. So that's what I teach now.
Excellent. I think you answered like maybe my first 4 questions in the first question. So you nailed that. So let's talk, I guess, a little bit more about the overview method. So, right, you gave us a little brief description, but like, how do you help people with this, right, secure attachment, relationship kinds of topics, and how do you help them, I guess, also in tying in healthy aging, right? Because obviously disease, things like anxiety and depression can wreak havoc on our aging process. So can you kind of wrap that all together?
Okay. Well, the reason why we're all here is we want to create a beautiful future. In other words, you want to have a future. You just turned 40. Can I just say you just turned 40 in October, right? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden I'm 44. So I get it. It's like, oh shit. Okay. What's the next 20 years going to look like? Right. So right now, once you hit a certain age, you're thinking, okay, how do I want the next 20 years to be? Boom. So now I'm thinking about the future. We are all consistently preoccupied with making sure that we have a healthy future. We have healed which here's what we really want. We want healed relationships. We want the ability to emotionally regulate, which totally plays into, our aging. We want to feel aligned with purpose. And we want to have deep intimacy. This is what's going to make or break your aging over the next 40 years. It's your healed relationships, your ability to emotionally regulate. Because if I can't emotionally regulate, my fight or flight goes up and down, and that takes its toll on my body. And that's a skill that nobody really taught us, like, systematically growing up, unless you were really lucky to have an attuned parent to be able to hold space for your big emotions. You were told when these big emotions came up to stuff them down, or they were silenced, or they were invalidated, which becomes like a trauma, which affects you in the future. And so those are the things that we want to create. But unfortunately, the past, like I just talked about, spills into the now, which completely blocks our vision, and we're constantly focused and fearful and resentful and have grievances about the past, and we're constantly thinking about them, and we're thinking about them, we're feeling a certain way, and when we're feeling a certain way, it causes us to keep thinking those thoughts to justify the feelings, which then cause us to feel exactly what we're thinking, which causes us to think how we're feeling. And what happens is the past then bleeds into the present and creates the future. So this beautiful, healthy future that you're here to create gets completely demolished because we're constantly spilling the past into it. So I discovered this, and I was like, I got to solve this problem. So I was always really inspired by the astronauts when I was younger. And if you can recall, in the 60s, when the astronauts went to the moon, we had a very unintended side effect happen. They went to the moon to study the moon, but then all of a sudden, at that moment, do you know what happened?
No. I wasn't born in the 60s. Come on, Dr. Nima.
I wasn't either.
I should know.
I wasn't either, but I do know that the unintended side effect was when we were going to the moon, we were able to turn around for the very first time, and we were able to see ourselves.
Yeah.
That's why I have this picture behind me. The picture behind me is called Earthrise. You can look it up. It's the first photograph ever taken of our planet. And it was that moment that humanity had a collective shift in conscious awareness of, holy shit, it's not us versus them. We're all in this together. We're all on a floating spaceship, an oasis in the desert, okay? And we cannot stay. We're only here for a short period of time. So the astronauts, whenever they would leave the planet, they would come back completely with a different perspective. Imagine you were that. You're in North Carolina, I'm in Vancouver, and we kind of forget, we're unconscious of the fact that I'm just here in my Vancouver apartment, right? But what happens is when you go to outer space and you look down, you're no longer the same. And there's a term for that. They call it the overview effect. The overview effect is a cognitive shift that astronauts make when they leave the planet, and they come back and they have this this heart dedicated to serving the planet. They have this global perspective, people orientation. There's no religious differences, holy books, color, whatever. It's like, whoa, let's awaken. It's like an awakening. It's a spiritual awakening. Many of these scientists would go up and have this spiritual awakening. And so I was very inspired by that. So when I'm doing my cognitive work on people, I'm helping people who are dealing with really deep traumas from their past or breakdowns in the relationships. And my job is to help them heal or help facilitate or be the guide in their path towards healing, because there's no healer except the healer within. The overview method is a series of questions that get you to inquire about the stories you've made up about your past, so that you can shift not just the narrative here, but in the body, the feelings that you've been running away from, avoiding, deflecting, or dissociated from because of trauma. We get you to reconnect to them, experience them, and to shift them into seeing that whatever was actually in the way of your past, that you're making responsible for your current misery that's destroying your future and causing you to age, it was on the way. Something that you can be grateful for. And when you shift those emotions, you allow the emotions to process, you have an integrative state of healing. And what happens is the cells of your body start to align. You start to get reconnected with yourself. Your future, your purpose starts to emerge, and healing starts to happen in your body. And you become present. And the more present you are, the less tick-tock of emotions going back and forth, past and future, the slower your aging process.
Beautiful.
So you slow down your aging simply by altering your perception, states of being, and in your body, and basically by integrating and healing the present, in getting yourself into the present moment. So the overview method is a emotional clearing tool that helps you clear the past, that gets you into the present, that awakens healing, creativity, and purpose into the awareness of the individual doing it. That's what I do.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I love your example of the moon and your picture, which perfectly ties into this. So do you have any examples that you could share, like for people watching right now? Sometimes it's helpful for people to get in it, right? Like they're like, oh, I helped Susie through this issue she had from being abused as a child. And these were all the negative things that were going on in her life because of that, but here's how she overcame it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Totally. I mean, where do I begin? I've been doing this for a few years. I have like countless number of cases. On my website, there's a lot of kind of people sharing their stories. So that's a good place to look. But one that just comes to mind was Shamila was a woman who had an abusive past. She had a restraining order on her ex-husband, 5 children, estranged from one of them who went with her ex, and she hadn't talked to him in 7 years, talked to her son in 7 years, and hadn't had any communication with her ex for that period of time. And slowly the resentment and the trauma caused her nervous system to completely freeze. And so that showed up as crippling anxiety. So she would just go to Costco to go shopping and have panic attacks. So her world was consistently getting smaller and smaller. And of course, with anxiety, it's the kind of the precursor to everything else. digestive issues, reproductive issues, zero libido, just completely just wanting to isolate herself. And here was the other thing that was happening. Her kids were actually exhibiting the anxiety as well. I want you to really understand, or please, if you're listening and this is relevant for you, to take notes that the level of your children are only as regulated. The children can only really be as regulated as their mother. Mm-hmm. Okay. If the nervous system of the mother is amped up, which is what anxiety is, which happens from trauma, then it spills over to the kids. And the kids, twin girls, they were cutting themselves. Now, this is not the mother's fault. I'm just saying that just like if I'm anxious, my dog kind of looks at me as like, what's going on, daddy? Right? Children, pets, the people around you, energetically, your emotions are kind of like these vibrations that are sent off, that are kind of sending and transmitting all this energy out, and people can feel it. You know this is true. And so she was dealing with a lot of anxiety and health problems, and she was like just looking ragged and decrepit, right? So she came into the process, and we started working with her and going back to those old scenes and the old trauma from her partnership with her ex-husband. Just so happened to be a transference from the past, which was a dysfunctional relationship with her mother. Mm-hmm. And so through the process of the overview method and session after session and coming and doing the work, she healed that relationship with her ex.
Got it.
She had a restraining order on him. And after a while, she was like, oh my gosh, she started taking ownership for her part. And so this is what happens, is when you do the work, that feeling of victimhood towards your past starts to heal, starts to clear. Where you saw victimhood and powerlessness, you now see your power. And all of a sudden, you're no longer in bondage from the past anymore. She broke those shackles and healed that relationship, healed her relationship with her son. Anxiety was gone. She's a fully self-expressed woman, upgraded in her career, started dating. And when people look at her now, her face looks like 10 years younger. She's 40 years old, and people look at her, they're like, you look 18. So, and there was no Botox or anything that we did. It was literally just healing her past. And it's kind of like rocks in your backpack, that emotional energy it takes to just be stuck emotionally and cognitively in the past slows your body down, your brain down, and she's now completely liberated from it. And so and we didn't talk about diet. We didn't talk about nutrition. Everybody knows what they should eat. Everybody knows that they should move. But if you're stuck in a fight or flight or freeze and you're beating yourself up and living in a world of shame, you don't feel worthy of going and doing yoga. You don't have the energy, or you don't feel deserving of eating proper foods. You just want to numb and sedate yourself with really shitty foods. But the second that you open your heart to yourself and connect with yourself and the younger version of yourself, all of a sudden you start to see that you have value. And because you have value, you want to move your body in inspiring ways, and you want to eat foods that are going to support the growth of your future rather than having no future at all. So that was just one of many cases, and one of the most meaningful and impactful to me, because I became friends with the kids. She restored her relationship with her son, and now anxiety is gone, and no medication, no anything external. It was just all changing the story in the mind and the body. And that's the most inspiring work and meaningful work that I feel that I can be contributing to the planet right now.
Beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate that example. That's just awesome. And that really highlights the possibility for people, no matter what kind of childhood or, trauma you've experienced as a child or an adult, like what's possible when you actually, work with someone, do the work to let that stuff go. So I love it.
Here's the thing about letting that stuff go. One of my clients just enrolled, and we started working together. She's a nurse practitioner for palliative care. So she sees end of life, people at the very end. And I asked her, I said, why are you reaching out to work with me? And she said, Well, because I'm over 40, I just turned 40. Just seems to be the midlife thing coming up again, Andy. Over
Right.
40. I love my husband. I love my kids. I love what I do. I'm a pleaser. I put on a happy face and I work and I sedate myself from my feelings. I'm afraid to feel. I know that there's stuff in my past that I haven't dealt with and I'm scared to feel. So I just tune out and I check out and my body is in agony. I am constantly in pain. Every muscle and bone of my body, whether it's fibromyalgia, all of these chronic pain syndromes, it's constantly in pain. She doesn't actually feel safe within her body. She's been suppressing her emotions. And she said, I know that if I don't deal with this now, I'm going to have to deal with it anyway, because I see people when they're dying. And when they're dying, if they don't deal, you can tell if they haven't dealt with their shit, if they haven't dealt with their past or they've been avoiding it or suppressing it, it actually comes out in their death, on their deathbed. Those emotions, the delirium, the fear, the toxicity, it comes out. She goes, sometimes it's a horrible experience watching someone die. Yet at the same time, for those who really have open hearts, who feel whole and complete, it's actually a very peaceful process. And she's like, I know what that means. And she's like, I want to die peacefully. And I was like, wow, it was like a light bulb that went off, which basically told me that you cannot hide from looking back and making sense of it. You cannot just cut off ties with your past and say, screw that, I'm just going to look ahead, as a way of bypassing those uncomfortable feelings, which is what most of us want to do. We bypass or we avoid or we repress. Repression means I'm not even aware it's there. Suppression means I keep pushing them down when they come up. Those emotions are aging you. And as you age and you want to, pass on to the, to the next, transition, you actually want to make sure that you've gotten whole and complete. And so that was like another light bulb that went off for me. So healthy aging is really about managing your emotions.
That's a beautiful story. Yeah. And someone who's worked with palliative care would know, right? All the experiences they must have to see people going, transitioning and yeah, that's powerful. I got the chills and teared up a little bit on that one.
Yeah.
There it is.
This is the question you want to ask yourself. How do I want to feel at the moment of my death? How do I want to feel? And you want to feel like you have a heart full of gratitude for your life, that you had meaning, that you are surrounded by people you love, who love you because they feel seen and heard by you. And you feel seen and heard by them. That's what makes life meaningful. It's not like, that's not what you're going to, you're not going to take the money with you. For me, it used to be all about money, fame. I got to achieve. I was doing because I was so dissociated from myself. I thought that by doing all of that, that was going to fill that empty hole, until I had to go through relationship breakdown after relationship breakdown for me to go, okay, so what's my role in this? And then I realized that I had an insecure attachment style that was because of my past separation trauma from my mother. And if I didn't do the necessary work to actually heal it, I was going to keep repeating these patterns, and every relationship breakdown emotionally causes another level of upheaval, which then causes more aging, more anxiety, more breakdown of the tissues of my body. And I realized the path to victory is healing those relationships, is repair. Repair starts with repairing the relationship with you first, and then going outwards to those people most important to you. So we heal through relationships.
So what do you want most for people watching right now?
I want most for people to start to take responsibility for their own healing. Start to observe how they've been living in a world of entitlement, that health is entitled to me, health care is entitled to me, love is entitled to me. someone should take care of me. And I want people to know that you can't delegate self-love to another person in a relationship. You cannot, if I don't love myself, I cannot get into a relationship hoping that you are going to be the one to give me what I've been lacking inside, because nothing that you do will ever be enough. And because that dysfunctional relationship with myself hasn't been healed, then I'm going to create that maladaptive dynamic in my relationships, which is going to cause a massive amount of stress, and it's going to break down my body. And then I'm going to, if I don't wake up and do the work, I'm going to actually errantly expect that that person wasn't the right one. I'm going to go from relationship to relationship, following the exact same pattern, hoping that somebody is going to rescue me. And it never is enough. I mean, if you have a business, you have strengths and weaknesses, it's wise for you to delegate your weaknesses. But if you have weaknesses within relationships, you can't delegate that. Right. It's up to you to fill the cracks in the floorboard. And every single time, 100 times out of 100, if we just keep going upstream of the health issue that's caused by the stress issue, that's caused by the relationship issue, if we just keep going upstream to the root cause, it all has to do with the relationship that I have with the universe, the context that I've created of who I am, excuse me, of who I am in context of this universe. And if I don't get that part right, everything downstream falls apart. And what I want everybody to know is that it is your responsibility for going upstream and aligning yourself with a cause and a meaning that's greater than you, so that you now have a context for everything in your life, including your relationships and your health. So don't sit there and say, and this is what I noticed as a healthcare provider, as a chiropractor, people are coming in for health, right? They want to get healthy. Not necessarily. This was my big aha. Not everyone wants to be healthy. In order for you to be healthy and live healthily, you must create a context of why you need to be healthy first. If you don't create a context for why you want to be healthy, i.e., I want to be able to play around and wrestle and with my grandkids. I want to be able to play golf in the most remote, beautiful courses around the world. I want to be able to hike up that mountain. I want to be able to watch my grandson get married. Okay, now there's a meaning behind it. Now, then we can reverse engineer how, and then you'll see that health is the vehicle to get you there. But health isn't just going to be automatic, and it's not entitled to you. You must work for it. And that's what I want everybody to know. And it has to do with a psycho-social, relational, spiritual relationship with yourself.
Beautiful. So what is your definition of a whole person?
A whole person to me is somebody who loves their dark parts.
Right.
Is present to their shadow, what I love to call the dark passenger. This wounded inner child that's been dissociated because of trauma. Essentially, when we're born, when a turtle is born, the mother lays its eggs and says, peace out, see you later. And the turtle can survive just fine on its own. Human beings are quite the opposite. We need our attachment from our primary caregivers in order to survive. We are completely useless on our own when we're born. So in order for us to survive, we must have good, healthy attachment to our parents, right, as our primary caregivers. But somewhere along the lines, if we had parents that weren't really attuned and had their own dissociation, when we don't behave according to exactly what they deem appropriate, and we experience a withdrawal of love, what happens is we then create a story in our egocentric state that who I am is not enough. My beingness is not worthy of love anymore. So I must, in this moment of choice, choose attachment versus authenticity. In other words, my authentic self isn't worthy of love. So I must play a role, put on a mask, and appease and please so that I can get my attachment needs met. That is our primary wound. I'm not lovable for who I am. That's the primary wound most of us experience, many of us, especially who's experienced trauma, experiences. So that's the first betrayal that happens, is we must betray ourselves in order to survive. And that fragments us and causes us to fracture our relationship with ourselves. And then we start to learn in school the same thing. Well, who I am is, we get bullied or we get into fights with our siblings, and we have this experience of a removal of love. And so this is what most of us go through. This is the journey of life. And so a whole person is someone who has become aware of that and has gone back and is able to reparent and reconnect with that younger self, that fragmented, that believes I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, that dark passenger, the voices of your dark passenger, you're not good enough, you're not worthy of love, and has been able to merge back and love those wounded parts and given them what they needed from their primary caregivers. That's how you have a whole person. A whole person is someone who's connected with that fractured, fragmented younger self and is giving them what they needed externally all along. And that's the key to health.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you. I just so appreciate your work. You're, very articulate and eloquent. I appreciate it all. And I want to make a quick note, since we're running a little low on time, that there's a button below this video, everyone watching or listening, leading over to a free training that you have. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. What I discovered was that everybody who's struggling in my practice, they were dealing with this anxiety of becoming something. They're in a relationship breakdown, divorce, separation. There was this career change. It's just that the becoming, the transition to something else. And so I discovered that this, just in my own life, going through a divorce, changing careers, I created this awareness that we're all dealing with transitional anxiety. So this transitional anxiety of going from where you are to where you would love to be, or a breakdown of something that just happened where you're literally kind of like at a crisis point, not knowing who you are, disconnected from yourself. I call that transitional anxiety. And I created a training that every single one of the clients that have healed from that have had to go through 5 shifts. And the training on it just describes and walks you through the shifts you need to go through in order to heal from that. And that's my gift that I'm giving.
Thank you. Are there any last insights? Anything else you want to leave people with before we hop off?
Yeah. Everywhere you would go, I remember this whole conversation is due to, my last relationship breakdown, where I was looking in a mirror and I was like, I just can't stand that person that I'm seeing. And I would talk to my friends and I would try to do reading, and I'd see these memes, and all it basically would say was, you got to love yourself. Just love yourself. Andy, just love yourself. And I'm like, perfect. Why didn't I think of that?
Right.
And it's like, how the hell do you do that? How the hell do you do that? Because I realized that if you don't have that, anything you learn, any coaching, any seminar, any whatever, is like putting software on a hard drive with a virus on it. So I realized that before I was going to learn anything else, that was going to be my purpose, is to learn not just esoterically how, but actually physically how to actually do that. So that when I look in a mirror, I don't just say it and feel like it's bullshit, that I look in that mirror and I can see myself and I can actually feel the feelings of saying it in my body. And I became obsessed with learning how to do that just for my own mental and physical well-being. And when I discovered that if I can learn to do that and not bullshit myself and actually be real about it, number one, how can I do that? Number two, how can I change the world with it? And so my last words to you is basically, if you don't make this a priority, then nothing else you do, nothing else you learn, no relationship that you have, no accomplishment, no amount of money, no client landing, no fame will ever be enough. That's the last real thing that I wanted to share with you, because it's the truth.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate this and your whole message and all your expertise. So thank you so much for doing this with us today, Dr. Nima.
Thank you for having me, Andy.
Absolutely.
I look forward to working again with you sometime. This is a really interesting conversation. I can't wait to continue this some other time.
Absolutely. And everyone watching and listening right now, thank you so much for showing up for yourself. And that there is a piece of self-love that you have committed to by showing up today. So we really appreciate that you're here, and we'll see you again real soon. Take care, everybody.